Change your heart, change your life, change the planet.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Van Orden, coming to you from the Appalachian Trail in Woodford, Vermont. And I've been getting some emails from people asking me to comment on the recent celebrity suicides that have been in the news. And at first I was reluctant to talk about this because I don't know these people. And for me to say this is what happened and this is why they killed themselves would be incredibly arrogant. Human life is really complex, and we exist in so many different types of environments and relationships, and we have different brains to begin with, and then different histories and upbringings, and there's just no way to know. So I'm not going to pretend like I have the answer, the solution, the opinion that is significant in relation to these tragic deaths. But I do have a perspective that I would like to share about depression and possibly suicide. Again, in a very general way. One of the things that has been noticed in brain scans is that people that tend to be depressed have greater activity in their right prefrontal cortex, so the very front of your brain, the most advanced part of the brain, as people often say. When you're at rest, and this is the important thing, when you're at rest, if you have greater activity on the right side, you will tend towards negative moods, negative thoughts, negative imagery, negative rumination, and depression. The further you are over on the right, or the greater the activity on the right compared to the activity on the left, because the left is still active, but it's really about the ratio of activity. So the greater the ratio of right activity to left, the more negative and depressed you're going to be. And people who, again, at rest in an fMRI scanner, who are happy and positive and upbeat and resilient and bounce back and things just roll right off of them, they'll have greater activity proportionately on the left. So this is something that we don't know yet if people are born this way. We don't know if this is an epigenetic factor, meaning that how your early upbringing and perhaps the experience of your parents before you were conceived or even during pregnancy, how that may have affected the expression of your genes. We don't really know yet. But we do know that people's brains, for whatever reason, are baked with a right shift, a left shift, or somewhere in the middle. And it's a bell curve. So in the population, you're going to find that the greatest number of people are in the middle, and then you're going to have tails of the distribution. Few people are going to be over with that very left shift, and a few people are going to be over on the right with that more negative right shifted perspective. So it's a minority that are on either end. Most people are in the middle. If you're watching my videos, chances are you're over on the right side of that distribution. And that's why my videos speak to you. So, regardless of why this happens, it is a physical reality. And it's a persistent one. And why I bring this up is that I get a lot of emails from people and comments giving me advice and suggesting that I try certain new alternative experimental strategies like psilocybin or LSD or ayahuasca or ketamines or transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, because there is some data showing that it can shift the brain. But I'm skeptical because these studies are really, really new. They're not really robust yet. They're stretching right now. At some point, we may find that these techniques really do shift the physical nature of the brain. But you have to keep in mind that the brain is a physical entity, and it doesn't just completely change its architecture because of a chemically induced state change, not trait change, but a state change. And this is what we find when we look at the work of Timothy Leary and others, is that these drugs cause a state change, which means they cause a temporary change in mood or feeling, but they don't change traits. They don't change the physical architecture of the brain. And this is where meditation comes into this conversation, because it's also been shown that long-term meditators who are studied at rest can still have a right-shifted prefrontal cortex. And again, this is based on how their brain was baked at an early age and throughout life, that you have meditators that are on the left, you have meditators that are in the middle, and you have meditators that are way over on the right when they're at rest in an fMRI. And this confused researchers because they thought, well, these meditators are self-reported to be really happy and blissed out and experiencing all this positivity, but yet we're still seeing the right shift in their brain. Again, in a certain percentage of the meditators. So they were confused, like, how can they be right shifted and yet still experience positivity? And we don't know the answer yet, but a couple of good candidates are that other parts of the brain have shown to change through long-term meditation. That there are certain types of meditation that simply bring about a state change, which means you feel better, you're more relaxed. And most of what Westerners consider meditation is really about relaxation. And that's a state change, meaning I meditate, I'm more relaxed. And that lasts a little while, but it's not enduring. You have to meditate again, just like the drugs. You have to take them again to change your state. This is what alcohol is. This is what coping mechanisms are. They're ways for us to change our state, but not change our traits. Certain types of meditation, not all, actually affect the physical hardware of the brain over a long period of time. Not immediately, but over many years of many hours a day of meditation, you see physical changes in the brain. You see traits starting to change. But you don't see a shift from right-sided dominance to left-sided dominance in people that start out with that right-shifted tendency. You don't see that. So, what I'm getting at is that people that are built on the right stay on the right, and therefore experience the world through a very different lens than people that are on the left. And the people on the left are like, what are you bitching about? What are you complaining about? Why are you so negative? Why don't you just get over it? Move on. Stop thinking about that. Come on, look at the beauty around here. Gratitude, man. They don't get that that's a filter that they're looking through. That's a window that their brain opens. Or it's a physical window that their brain has, whereas people on the right have a different window. They're not looking at the same view, nor through the same glass. Their glass is not rose-colored. And again, nobody's fault. Neither one is good or bad, right or wrong. Just this is a reality. Different types of brain perspectives. So, if you're a long-term meditator, you may still have a right shift. You may still have the tendency for negative thinking. You still may have the tendency for negative perspective, negative interpretation, and to see violence or threat or to not trust. That will still be your tendency, but other parts of your brain can be developed so that that negativity doesn't bother you as much, or so that you don't identify with that negativity. It's not about getting rid of the negativity. It's simply about developing other aspects of your brain function, your brain hardware, so that the negativity rises and then falls. Now, if you have a left shift or if you're in the middle, you don't really have to do a whole lot there, because this is not a persistent problem for you. You're not continually bombarded by a mind at rest that is trying to tear you to pieces by constantly rubbing your nose in negativity and rubbing your identity in its failings, its shortcomings, its inadequacies, and how disgusting you are, and you're just a loathsome being. That's been most of my life. And it's not that that goes away. It hasn't gone away from me. I'm still profoundly insecure, but I have trained myself for years now to, first of all, move my body, because it's when a mind is at rest that you see this shift. It's when you're not purposefully engaged. A part of the brain comes on, or several regions in the brain come on, that researchers call the default mode network, and this is where this negative rumination or self-evaluation takes place. And even if you have a left shift, even if you're positive, if you are at rest, you still have this default network coming on, but it's going to be focused on positive aspects of you. This network in the brain is very much self-reflective, so it's going to be positively self-reflective, or it's going to be negatively self-reflective, but either way, it's self-reflective. But when you're in motion, when you are purposefully engaged, when you have a direction, and you're tackling something like me, tackling this mountain today, your default mode network turns off. Other parts of the brain come online, and you start to move out of that self-referential state. And the more you do this, the more you begin to see, if you're aware and if you notice and if you're committed to understanding or self-awareness, you begin to notice that there's a constant shifting that goes on in you, that you are not one thing. You don't just have one identity. You don't have one experience or one mood or one strength or one mortal flaw. That you are a multitude. And it's not just movement for me, but it's being out here engaging in my versions of meditation practice or mindfulness practice. Being present to my physical discomfort, being present to the amount of time that my brain is condensing into this moment. How much past is there in this moment? How much future is there in this moment? How much time is being blended together and then experienced as the now versus, can I get rid of the past? Can I not look at the future? And can I be right here and really tune into the sensations, experience, and states of being now? Can I be right here? And so I have a whole arsenal of tools that I use that move me not away from the right, but move me into other parts of the brain where that right shift is no longer problematic, where that right shift is no longer my worst enemy. And I'm out in the world powerfully engaging. And the key thing is that when I come back to be at rest, that right shift is waiting for me. But through doing these other types of activity and engaging mindfully in the midst of discomfort and breathing things in and reducing them into such small, tiny steps and moments that none of them are ever really that threatening to me, I begin to develop a brain that hears that negativity, that hears those voices and says, oh, okay, that's just that part of my brain doing its thing. I send it love. And I tell it it's okay. And I do this throughout the day. I say, it's okay. Because it's going. I wake up in the morning and it's going. It's okay. So back to the beginning of this conversation regarding depression and suicide. So much of modern Western existence is spent in a sedentary, contemplative state. And when I mean contemplative, I don't mean in the Buddhist fashion. I simply mean in the American version of I'm sitting here and I'm stewing in my own thoughts. I'm daydreaming, I'm mentalizing, I'm drifting into these abstract narratives about the state of the world or American democracy or whatever it might be. And I'm not here. I'm not in the room that I'm in. I'm not in the world that I'm in. I'm not in the now that I'm in. I'm in these narrative analyses, and they're quite self-referential, again, when we're not engaged. So even though you may be thinking about American politics, you're thinking about how it relates to you and how you feel in the world. Do you feel safe? Do you feel confident? Do you feel trusting, etc.? So it always comes back to you. How does American politics affect how you feel right now and your level of safety or confidence? So most people, again, in the Western world are sedentary most of the time. They may exercise, but it's a bit. Very few people exercise an hour a day, 7 days a week. That's rare. And to do what I do, which is probably 1 to 4 hours every day, 7 days a week, is just, most people would consider that extreme. But our bodies are built for movement. I'm not hammering the whole time I'm moving. Like right now, I'm walking down the mountain. But this is movement. This is engagement. This is a deactivation of that default network and an activation of other brain regions that keep me in a more empowered state and allow me to process the world without myself in it. And that's really key. When people become deeply depressed to the point of being suicidal, it's very hard for them to remove their sense of identity or their sense of self from the world. It's everywhere. Their beingness is deeply integrated into every moment in a profoundly negative way, and they can't escape it. So this is why I move so much, so that I don't have to be self-referential, so that I don't have to be thinking about how I relate to this mountain or to whatever environment I'm in. I can just be in it. I can be engaged, and when feelings arise in me, like the discomfort I felt going up this mountain or the race I had yesterday, I work really hard to experience these sensations as felt, but not mine. Okay, there is pain. I'm noticing pain, and I'm noticing my brain wanting to collapse time into a very, very dense substrate that includes lots of future and lots of past. I notice these things, but I don't say that they're mine, or at least my practice is to remove the me or mine from them. Yes, there is intensity. Yes, there is discomfort. Yes, there is a burning sensation. But it's not mine, per se. It's something I'm experiencing. It's something I'm witnessing or observing, noting, describing, but not owning. And this is one of the reasons that I race so often, is because when you're in extreme pain for extended periods of time, it allows you the opportunity to be in the midst of pain and to be compassionate and to be gentle and to remove yourself from the pain and not identify with it, but just simply observe it and keep going. So that when you come into the rest of your day or other experiences, there may be pain or discomfort, but you're like, yeah, I know how to deal with that. That's okay. I can survive that. That's not going to kill me. In fact, that's nothing compared to the race I did yesterday. And I chose that, and I chose to be present to it, and I chose to be calm in its midst. It wasn't my pain per se, it was simply pain, and I was running with it, not as it. So, again, I don't know the celebrities or anyone else that might have tragically taken their own life this week, because they're not the only two people that did, and that's something that gets missed. We focus on the celebrities and we miss all these so-called normal people that also took their lives. I don't know anybody's individual situation, but I know what brains do. And I know that for myself, having an extreme right shift and a brain that tends to negativity and depression every day, that moving my body, engaging in discomfort, and reducing the amount of me that's involved in the conversation, and reducing the amount of time that's involved in any step, and reducing the number of actions or thoughts involved in each and any step, has allowed me to move powerfully in every day of my life. And when you practice this, when you practice moving towards discomfort slowly and gently, and when you practice getting out of that narrative state, out of that default mode network, and into a larger world, a larger context that you don't need to identify with, but you simply move through, the idea of suicide just never shows up. It's not something you need. There's nothing to escape from. There's no one to escape from, because you begin to see that you are not one. You are many. You are multitudes. And the more that you engage yourself, the more different versions of you that you get to experience, the more states that you get to experience, the more traits that you get to see evolve. But not all of them. So, for those people that struggle with negativity, that struggle with that rumination, don't look for teachers or advice that tells you that you can get rid of it, because it's highly likely that you can't. We don't have any research so far that says that you can change that, but you can change how you experience it. You can change what it does to you, and you can change how long it lasts or how tight its grip is. And I'm a great example of that. I've met very few people in my life that are more challenged than I am, and yet I'm a highly functional person. I can't do everything, but what I do very, very well. And I have joy every day. Even if it comes back into depression, I know how to go back and create the joy again. I know how to engage myself and be purposeful again and shift my state as I shift into the sunlight. Okay, I hope there's some value there for you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have comments about this, share them. Let me know your experience. Let me know what you've tried. And subscribe to this channel if you want more content. And if you want to keep this conversation going, help me out on Patreon. $1 or $2 a month. That's all it takes. And we can continue this conversation ad infinitum. To infinity and beyond!